Just after 9 a.m.
we started like this. What's up, everybody? It's me, Sam Martin and Eric Knight here at the Prescott Executive Studios. And if you don't know, this room is not that big. Still, came in the other day. Whoa, this is how big the room is.
You've ever been to a real studio?
Yeah, it's small.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, stay with us because we have something to talk about. And as you probably are reading in the headlines up here or down here, we're talking to Councilmen Pro Tem. Yep, Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Brandon Montoya. And if you're ready, get your snacks out because we've got, it's like Real Housewives of Prescott City Council. It's almost,
it's not that dramatic. Well, maybe it is. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome to the 863 Morning Show with your host, San Martin Rodriguez and Eric Knight. Eric, someone always kicks their thing.
I'm sorry, it was me.
I was like, it's always good to go, and the camera's always like whatever. So I gotta be
it's always moving. All right, so we have Thursday, which is now November 2nd already.
Is it?
It's going fast. We actually just set up the holiday party for the PEO offices because it's that time of year.
What holiday? What day is the holiday party? So I can put it in my thing.
You'll get it. We'll figure it out. But it just gives you an idea. We're in that season. But anyway, let's talk about the day first before we talk about the year.
Let's go.
All right. So because if you haven't had enough candy or sweets or anything else, it's Cookie Monster Day.
Cookie Monster.
National Cookie Monster Day.
Dude, I used to love Cookie Monster because he was just like always eating cookies. So I was like, dude, I want to be like Cookie Monster when I grow up.
Yeah. No, I hear you. He was probably the best character, right?
Yeah, very much so. I actually like him. And Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar the Grouch?
Yeah, for some reason, I always liked the Grouch. Probably because my grandpa was the Grouch. And I don't know. I navigate to grouchy people for some crazy reason.
Hey.
Eric ain't grouchy.
All right.
Eric ain't grouchy. He's actually a really good man, I promise. But I tell you what, man, I actually do gravitate to that type of people, probably because I feel like I go ahead and change their attitude about life in general. So, guys, let's go ahead and do a rundown before we get Mayor Pro Tem Brandon Montoya on. But I just want to run down real quick. This weekend is going to be Traysmas. If you guys do not know, it's happening in Prescott Valley at the CrossFit. Mm-hmm. And I think
it's a cool place.
Yeah, there should probably be an address on here. But if you guys want to be a part of it, please reach out to the Prescott Trade Network, also AKA Haley Knight. And also, if you guys don't know, this week it is going to be actually tonight is going to be the block party for the Turquoise Pro Rodeo. And then tomorrow, or the Saturday, Sunday is going to be the actual rodeo. So if you guys want to get out of town, go to Camp Verde, please let me know because we have some extra tickets if you want to go ahead and be a part of it. I found out I had extra tickets. So
are you going to give some away?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to give them away. And also, Festival of Trees is coming down. It's going to be the Jingle Mingle starting on November 15th. We are not going to do a business social. We're just going to go ahead and bring everybody to the Jingle Mingle. And it's going to be $55, but all proceeds are going to Casa for Kids.
Okay.
So,
it's such a great event.
Yes. Are you going to do a tree this year?
I don't know yet.
All right. And then also we are supporting Luna del Lago, and that's happening again this weekend. And it's going to be so beautiful down there. So I'm really looking forward to this because I will be there on Saturday.
Lake Pleasant.
Yep, Lake Pleasant. And then once again, guys, this is how we like to do things. And I'm just going to keep on plugging this in until the end of the day. New Year's, end of year's business social is December 28th, and all are invited that are in business or that really like us on our morning show. So if you guys want to be a part of it,
28th, the end of the year already.
It
you literally have something on the calendar that's the end of the year already.
It's
killing me.
I already have stuff on the calendar for the beginning of the year.
No,
I don't know if you know it, but
are you ready to write 2024?
No, because I messed up on my actual post that I said 2023. And Eric and I are going to be actually speaking the beginning of February. So just FYI, if you guys want to be a part of it, you guys want to get a dose of some really awesome education in some places that we have never been, and we want to share on how we got to where we're at. So with that, guys, we're just going to go ahead and get into this new type of conversation because this is all about what's going to be happening. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys?
Hey, we're doing fine. We're fabulous over here, man. I look like I'm ready to rock the day and find out what's going on. I mean, like, there's some waves going on.
I feel like I didn't get the time memo though.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, oh yeah, you didn't get the
I didn't get the time memo.
but you
Okay.
do got the black V-neck.
All right. Well, right into this thing. And so just assume that nobody has any clue as to what's going on because it's just so much going on, and things really got spicy in Prescott starting last week. So you want to kind of give us an idea of what the heck's going on?
Yeah, and it's um,
Start from the top.
yeah, right from the top. So I guess kind of where a lot of this goes back to is for a long time, City Council has been kind of considering the idea of acquisition of property around the airport, and part of that is working with various landowners to kind of work through negotiations with that. The nature of those negotiations happens in what's called executive session, typically with council. And so when we do that, we're behind closed doors because we have to make sure, that we're negotiating in good faith with those people. And oftentimes we're receiving legal advice from the city attorney when we're entering those negotiations. So as that's happening, we're kind of, figuring things out, negotiating it. After a while, though, council made the decision as a group and in concert with city staff that, it's appropriate that we start talking about what we're looking at doing in a public meeting so that citizens have an idea of what's going on. So we had what's called a study session on Tuesday of last week. And during study sessions, we don't vote on things. Usually we receive a presentation from our staff, and they'll say, here's kind of the lay of the land of what you're considering. Here are some things you need to be aware of. And so we had a study session about the airport land acquisition that we're considering. And when we had that study session, immediately prior to that study session, the city manager notified city council that she had asked the airport director to no longer work for the organization. One thing I want to point out about the way that the city council works and with a city manager, and I think some folks might not understand this, but if you're like me and you have a business background or you've been on a nonprofit board before, you might have some basis of understanding this. But city council, mayor, and the city manager, their roles are really similar to a public company that might have a board of directors, and then you have a chairman of that board. That's in this case your mayor, and then you have a CEO, and the CEO runs the company, day-to-day operations, make sure payroll's getting done, make sure marketing's getting done, doing all those things, right? Whereas your board of directors is kind of the vision for what the company is going to be, and they say, all right, we think this company needs to do this in the next 5 years. We think the company needs to do this in the next 2 years, and this is, kind of what we're looking at a big picture wise. That's what council is supposed to do. So the mayor and council are supposed to provide the direction for the city, and the city manager is supposed to run the operations of the city. And so accordingly, the city manager has complete domain over city staff. She can fire, hire, discipline, give pay raises for staff however she wants to. Now, she may, as she's going through that process, engage council and say, hey, I'm having this problem. I want council to know about it. But that's usually more of a professional courtesy as opposed to seeking permission. And so right prior to that study session, the city manager, Katie Gregory, informed council via email. She said, we parted ways with the airport director. She no longer works with the city. And, she didn't go into a lot of details about what was going on there in that email. We go into the study session and we are talking about acquisition around the airport. And in the midst of that conversation, what happens is Councilmember Roosing, Councilmember Kathy Roosing, pretty much kind of just throws out that the airport director is no longer working for the city, and says that that was a decision made by the city manager, and she's pretty insistent that she wants to hear from the airport director, who at this point is no longer an employee of the city, but is in the audience of the city council chambers. As we're kind of going back and forth, it gets really tense, and I'll tell you, my concern when that happened was that we're bringing a personnel matter into public meeting essentially, and that's not really fair to anybody, because The city of Prescott is an employer like any other employer, and they're subject to liability when it comes to bringing personnel matters into a public space, and that's a real concern for me. But further on in that meeting, Councilmember Roosing also disclosed details of the negotiations that we've been going through with the landowners that we're considering purchasing land from, and she, went so far as to name names of who some of those folks were, and kind of disparaged them as well. And Prescott, the city of Prescott City Council is subject to what's called open meeting law in the state of Arizona. And there's a specific statute that deals with political subdivisions. And it essentially says that you can't talk about things that happen in executive session in public. And the reason this is important is because at the beginning of every executive session meeting, the city attorney reads an admonition that basically says, don't talk about anything that happens in this meeting. So that's it. When Councilmember Roosing made the choice to start talking about things that were going on in that executive session, she very likely violated open meeting law. And so accordingly, as I have a sworn duty to the city of Prescott, I reported that violation to the Attorney General's office as a violation of open meeting law, or what I perceive to be potentially a violation, so that the Attorney General can investigate that matter further. So that was the study session. Immediately after the study session, the mayor made a decision to convene a special session, which he has the power to do. And so he convened a special session for Thursday at 3:30 p.m. And the nature of the the special session that he kind of set up was to consider and review the employment of the city manager. And so the concern there is that there's a direct connection between the city manager's decision to make a personnel decision and then reviewing the terms of the employment of the city manager. And again, just so you guys know, the city charter that we have, I think 13 amendments that we're voting on right now. People have probably received their ballots at home. They've got 13 different amendments on there. The city charter is kind of like the city of Prescott's constitution. So it kind of says, this is how we're going to be organized as a city. These are the rules we're going to live by in our community. And I'll tell you, it's not vague at all about the city manager's role. It's really, really clear that the city manager has complete domain over personnel decisions. And so by pulling in a special session immediately after an employment decision that was entirely the city manager's right to make that decision, it called into question whether or not we're following the charter as a council.
Brandon, real quick, I want to ask you and just confirm, the city manager, they were recently hired, like the entire council was on board in unanimous, right? As far as the hiring.
Katie Gregory comes, she was I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of, she spent 3 decades working for the city of Peoria, kind of worked her way up through the system. Like she was a finance director, she was a parks and recreation director. Peoria is a pretty big city too. And she was among the final 4 people that we were considering when we were doing the city manager hiring job. She came in, everyone was very impressed with her. Thinks that, she had really good things to say. We're really excited about working with her. The decision to hire her was it was unanimous. Nobody voiced dissent in that decision. From what I recall, it was, we all affirmatively voted on her contract positively to hire her in an open session. So she had a mandate to do her job from the council, and that, and I've talked to other folks about this, and I've said, she could have made that choice. She could make the choice to decide to part ways with another manager of the city. Maybe the fire department manager. And I'm not saying that she is, but she has that. She could decide to do that, and I could disagree with that decision, or I could question it, and I could say, I think the fire department manager is doing a really good job, and I'm confused as to why we're doing this, but I can't overrule her decision, and I can't say, go and hire this person again. You made a mistake, rehire this person back into the organization. Because it's just, then what's the point of having a manager? It would be like if your board of directors started making decisions about the smallest details. You can't micromanage a manager that way. It's just, in addition to being bad governance for the city of Prescott, it's just bad. It's a bad way to run anything.
Brandon, you know, as far as context, everybody doesn't really understand the whole council and how these laws and how these regulations actually really do establish. Now, when you start talking about, you know, them talking about the firing of, it was Dr.
Robin Sabata.
And she was the director for the airport
for a long time, for quite a while, right?
Yeah, I think she was the director since 2017. She was a teacher at Embry-Riddle. She came in as an interim initially, and then was offered permanent employment.
All right, and so I mean, going back to the actual meeting itself, you know, it just is quote and unquote of what Kathy Rusi say, not direct verbiage, but she said in the thing saying that I want to hear from her because she's still a citizen of the community. Now, this conversation that was going in between the city manager and also Councilwoman Kathy Rusi, this conversation that they're having right there is what we're talking about in regards to saying how council can't be like, hey, you know, that's my buddy. I don't know why you're doing that to said person. I don't think that you have that right to do so. And obviously, you know, the city manager does have that right to do that. So kind of like bringing the context of what really is the overall goal to these conversations. I mean, are we placing our council men and women accountable for doing their job and also making sure that they're doing it right without having a dictatorship, I guess you would call it, or actually that's what kind of the, if I'm not mistaken, you had a meeting with Mayor Cal Palguda, or not a meeting, I'm sorry, radio interview, and somebody called in, and that was the exact words. This is not a dictatorship. This is something that, you know, you guys need to really honestly focus in. And being elected, there's protocol, and you guys have to follow that protocol.
And I think a lot of people think when you get elected to the council, you can call up Brandon and be like, "Hey, Brandon, my trash didn't show up." And I think eventually a lot of people do. Like that's not how this works, right?
They do. Yeah. And I don't want to discourage anyone from doing that. By the way, I'm happy to take those calls. If you're not getting your trash picked up, you know, I'm happy to be the person who does that, but who tells the public works department about that. But generally speaking, you're probably going to get a faster response than if you go directly to the public works department, right? And again, if you've got someone creating a noise violation in your neighborhood, like they're playing their music at like midnight or something, you should call the non-emergency police number. If you call me, like, I'm going to give you that number. And it's because, again, but that's not to say that I don't want to hear from people or that it's not my job to be a voice for citizens. But what it is that I can't go down to the police department and say, hey, you need to put a squad car over by, you know, the crossings because there's too much speeding happening on Willow Creek Road, because I'm not the chief of police. And what's more, even if I thought that, I don't have the training or expertise. I'm not, you know, Amy Bonney, our chief of police, has been the chief of, you know, she's been in the police department for 20 plus years, right? She's an expert in her field. All of these people, and this is why you have a professional city manager making these decisions. You know, and like I said about Katie Gregory, in addition to being, you know, almost a 30-year employee, I think, for the city of Peoria, she also has an undergraduate degree in public administration and a master's in public administration. This is someone who has basically spent her entire adult life learning how to do this job. And so the idea that a city council is going to second guess a administrative duty that she has is frankly absurd, and it's not appropriate.
So let's get to a resolution to the conversation. I mean, now what is happening? I didn't finish. Let me finish this part. So
we're going to go long today just because there's a lot to this, like built up to this. Yes, so go ahead.
So let me just give you a little bit more context, and then we can kind of go into maybe what happens next. But I will say the next thing that kind of happens in the scenario is the mayor did call that special session. And this is you know, a video that's online. I posted it. It's on the city's portal that you can see public meetings on. And it's the most recent meeting. So we had the meeting on Thursday. It was a meeting that was agended for discussion of the city manager's contract. And so when we had that meeting, we were all expecting to have a conversation about the city manager's employment, essentially. and whether she was doing her job appropriately or if there were concerns around her, that kind of thing. And the mayor starts talking at the beginning of that meeting and makes it pretty clear that that's not what we were going to do during that meeting. He specifically cites that, I think we're going to talk about Prop 469, which is the proposition that is on the ballot to amend the city charter as it relates to the idea of, changing the nature of how the city manager can be fired. Now, that's an amendment that is not based on Katie Gregory's employment. It's just an amendment that the Charter Review Committee put on the ballot. But it wasn't, he made clear that we weren't going to talk about the airport director and we weren't going to talk about Katie Gregory, which is what the meeting had initially been called for. And so when that happened, again, things need to get adjudicated and ruled on by people, and the Attorney General needs to weigh in and all this, but you don't get to change an agenda on the fly because the idea is that for open and transparent government to happen effectively, the citizens need to know what council is going to get together and talk about before they talk about it, and they need to get adequate notice to do so. And so when he changed the agenda, when he tried to change the agenda item, Councilman Eric Moore, said, this isn't on topic. This isn't why any of us were here today. And the mayor noted his objections and then started to proceed into the meeting. At that point, I asked to be recognized, and I said, this is a waste of time. This isn't what we're here for. This is not appropriate to discuss. It wasn't noticed properly. And I made a motion to adjourn the meeting, and that motion passed 4-3. And so then, that was, and I'll tell you, it was the most tense meeting I've ever been on city council. And it was also the shortest because we were done in less than 15 minutes.
Well, we watched it. I watched it.
I listened to it. Yeah,
it was a little awkward.
and so I mean, just for perspective, like this type of meeting, when you see it on the agenda, everybody knows what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no question. Like there are things that are playing into it hours before the meeting, so people can be prepared, rights can be addressed, and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So this wasn't like there wasn't a misunderstanding here, right?
No. It was very clear, and in fact. There's a component for public employees when this type of meeting is put on an agenda for a public employee like Katie Gregory. She has rights that are associated with that kind of meeting. And one of the rights she has is typically, like I said, a meeting like this would happen in an executive session where we would discuss it because, essentially she has the right to say, I don't want you to bring up some sort of disciplinary matter about me that might impact me professionally in front of God and country and everybody. So she also has the opposite right, though, where she can say, I do want you guys to, if you're going to chastise me, you better do it in public. So that morning of that meeting, she actually shifted the meeting and said, I don't want this meeting to happen in executive session. I want it to happen in public. And, that's, her right to do so. But it was very clear what that meeting was about. Nobody was under any illusion that we were going to talk about Prop 469. We were there to talk about the employment of the city manager.
So this discussion right now currently is ongoing, and I know that you have already alerted. Who did you alert as far as?
So I did three different things. As I mentioned earlier, when Kathy Rusing talked about some of the negotiations we had in executive session in a public meeting, I filed an open meeting law complaint with the Attorney General's office. When the mayor decided to try and change the agenda, I also filed an open meeting law complaint with the Attorney General's office about that for him as well. When he did that, and based on his actions or what I believe his actions and motivations to be, I also filed a complaint with the city attorney's office suggesting that he's in violation of the city charter, which is a violation of his oath of office.
And what I'm unclear at, and I think maybe others are based on your other radio and other interviews that you've done about this, what is the recourse now? So what can the Attorney General decide to do with what you've done? You've done your part, we're moving on. What happens next?
So with the open meeting law violations, there is specific statute that speaks to punishment around it. And so typically, people inadvertently will break open meeting law sometimes. And I think the Arizona revised statutes kind of consider that idea that, that can happen. And so the first offense is not a major offense necessarily. But then there are fines that are associated with it. So the initial fine, I think, on a second offense is something like $500, and then I think it escalates to $2,000 if you have a third offense. But with the complaint about the city charter, I think that there are a number of potential recourses here. One is that if it's the Arizona revised statutes also contemplate that if someone violates their oath of office, they've broken the law. And so if someone breaks the law, there's procedures for removal from office. One of those procedures is a recall. So citizens could get together and decide to recall the mayor if they believe strongly enough that he's violated his oath of office in a way that's not appropriate. There are criminal penalties associated, and some of those criminal penalties rise to the level of felony. And so if you commit a felony, you can be removed from office without a recall necessarily. At this point, what I think is likely to happen is that council is likely to have another meeting to discuss the behavior of the mayor.
And is it just the mayor that is in question here, or is Kathy Roosing as well?
I don't know. So the mayor specifically is in a situation, in my opinion, because of his actions with conducting the meeting, with some of the actions that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail at the moment about as they relate to the city manager. I think he's created some challenges for himself. And I think that there needs to be, frankly, there just needs to be accountability. We can't have people not fall through on their oath of office. We can't have people decide that, as former Councilman Steve Blair, who called into the show with Kel and I, said, we can't have a dictatorship here. And it's funny because I don't agree with Steve Blair about a lot of things, but one thing that he and I do agree about is that Mayor Prescott is not, a despot or a dictator. You don't get to just decide that it's my way or the highway. And the reason that's true is because the mayor has the same amount of votes as every other member of council, which is 1. And so that's why when he voted, he did not vote to adjourn that meeting. So he 4 people who were not the mayor decided to adjourn the meeting because they didn't think it was appropriate. And in my mind, that was a good thing that we did, because if we had continued to participate in that meeting, we all would have been essentially accessories to an open meeting law violation. So, I will tell you, this is something that I think is very, very serious. It needs to be brought to the attention of people in the community, because at the end of the day, you can, and I can have disagreements with other members of council. That's okay. But we can't disagree about how we run our community in terms of the framework of what the city charter says, what our ordinances say, what the laws of the state of Arizona say. We can't just make it up on the fly. We have to actually really agree that we're a society of rules and laws, and we follow those rules and laws.
Okay, so once again, during the conversation, a piece of Kathy Roosing actually saying, "Hey, what about the firing of so and so?" That right there is not a violation to this open meeting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here's what I'll say. It's certainly. I don't know if it's a violation specifically of open meeting law. I do know that in my sense, it did open up the city to significant liability potentially in terms of
it's an HR issue, right? Even if it's not a city issue, it's like an open meeting issue. It's definitely an HR issue.
Yeah. So the calling of what you're asking for right now is obviously to have the transparency through the city council men and women, because that's what you guys are called to do. You guys are here to serve the community, not yourselves. And what I'm getting at is that you're saying that the mayor has definitely put that into the council and also the community in general. So you're asking the city attorney or the state attorney to fix this and also reprimand him for his actions.
I don't know about fix it.
Well,
right?
I'll be clear. It's not. I'm not an attorney. I'm not. I don't work for the Attorney General's office. I'm not a law enforcement person. I have an oath of office to uphold, the laws of the city of Prescott, the state constitution, the city charter, and the U.S. Constitution. And so, for me, what that means is that if I believe that someone else that I serve with is in violation of the law, I have to turn it over to someone who has more investigatory powers than I do. And I think that's the course we're headed down, is that there's going to need to be an investigation about all of these matters that we've talked about, because it's not appropriate for the city of Prescott to necessarily try and figure it out. We need to have an independent, non-biased person come in and do that. And I don't know if that's the Attorney General's office. I don't know if that's the by county, attorney. Somebody needs to basically look into these matters with a little bit more precision and expertise to investigate it.
Well, and quick question on that. I mean, so I remember something, not exactly, but where there was this friction and questionable council laws being violated in Wickenburg. It was Wickenburg? No, it was Quartzsite a number of years ago, and it became national news. Like basically, Quartzsite got labeled as this place of the wild, wild west where the council and the sheriff's office run free, and obviously that something like that could happen here.
That doesn't happen anywhere.
And get the spotlight here. I haven't seen any public statements by anybody, by Kathy Rusing, by the mayor, by even you. Just basically, just like a public, this is where we're at kind of statement.
So I will tell you, Eric, I have a public statement that I prepared. I think it'll probably run in the paper on Sundays, my thinking.
Okay.
So that will be a public statement about it, and it will kind of, much like this conversation and much like the conversation I had with Cal Palguda, it will kind of lay out all of the factors and the considerations that I think we have. But I think the point you brought up about Quartzsite is really, really salient, because what happens is this can have really far-reaching implications for our community. And when I say our community, I'm talking about the implications of our business community too. Because if people look at something like this and say, gosh, these guys at city council aren't really taking their job seriously, they're not following the law, they're doing whatever they want, they're not being held accountable for what they're doing. As a business person, you kind of have to say, do I want to be mixed up in that? Like, how does that impact me? Do I want to be associated with that? And so we have to proceed with a lot of caution, because it can really have a negative impact. Kel brought this up on the radio when we were talking, and he knows folks, and he said that there are business community members in Prescott that are kind of like, this is kind of out of limits, and maybe I need to move my business to Prescott Valley, where at least I know they're going to do things, they're going to follow the rules and the laws.
And as a business person, Brandon, basically, stability is key. If you don't have, there's too many factors in business, this, and economic factors, global factors, national factors. You've got to have stability, and that starts here at home.
Yeah, and it's and I think at the end of the day, one of the missions I see City Council as doing is fostering and supporting business when we can. Right now, that doesn't mean that we're going to help people start a business or anything like that, but it's kind of like, first rule of city council should be do no harm to business owners, essentially, right? We want them to be able to flourish and thrive, because at the end of the day, especially the way that our tax system works in the city of Prescott, is the thing that pays for police and fire, streets, trash trucks and all that stuff, it's sales tax. And so who creates that sales tax? It's business. And so the commercial activity that happens in this community is our lifeline. And so if the people who are responsible for generating that commercial activity in this community are looking at the city council and saying, whoa, you guys it looks like, for one thing, the discord alone is not good. But if you're going up to a point of potentially violating the law, that's even worse.
Right. And real quick, there's a bunch of comments, but one of the last comments here, which is great, is they watched the meetings on YouTube, and honestly, without this explanation, really struggled to follow what was going on. And so, I mean, that's really it. Is most people that are not in business or in government don't understand these rules. They don't understand what's going on. And so really appreciate you jumping on. And
that's why I reached out to San Martin. I wanted to get on here just because I know that it's kind of one of those things where, rumors start flying around. It gets confusing. People are like, is it this? Is it that? And it's not, let's be honest. It's not super sexy stuff. It's local government, but it does have implications for our community. And I think what I've been hearing is that a lot of local business owners that I talk to, that I have connections with, I've been here for, almost 30 years. Those folks that I've talked to who know about what's going on. They're like, guys, get it together, Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I hate is, seeing the council men and women, I hate to say the word divided, but once again, it needs to be established where you guys are working together and wholeheartedly for the people that are in their community rather than your own personal self well-being. So I appreciate you standing up and holding the accountability to its highest point, because technically what's been happening in all of the communities in all of the world is that trust is becoming an issue amongst everybody that's in leadership and anybody that's actually even trying to say anything. Everybody's very, very discouraged by that. So this brings a little bit of substance. So
all I was going to do is say I am not a deep fake avatar, so I am the real Councilman Montoya.
Well, so and let me say, guys, I mean, I don't like this division. I don't like this discord. This isn't what I think is good for our community. But at the end of the day, what I have to do for myself is stand in my truth, stand in my integrity, and stand in my values. And so when I think that someone is kind of messing around with not doing the right thing, even if they're someone who I respect and admire, I've got to be the voice. I am trusted by my community to be a leader, and I take that responsibility really seriously. And for me, what that means is doing the right thing in my own actions. And when someone else isn't doing the right thing in their actions, calling them out and saying, "Hey, this is not right."
Well, I mean,
keep us posted on the story. Keep us up to date.
I'm pretty sure that will be.
Like I said, I think I have something. I'll have a statement in the Courier on Sunday. Keep posted for additional information. I appreciate you guys letting me spread the word.
Yeah, no worries. And we actually released a press release this morning in regards to that abrupt meeting ending. So let's see what happens, man. And I really do, I actually pray for my leaders. So I never want to see any kind of, separation or division amongst our leaders, especially community, in our community, my community that I've been born and raised in. So I really do appreciate you standing up, and I really hope and pray that you guys all become, people that are working for us rather than against us. So,
but different views are good. So, but not different procedures that are illegal.
We definitely got to follow the rules and the regulations. And you know what? Sometimes you got to be called out, and this is the time for it.
Thank you, guys.
Well, I appreciate you, sir. And we're out of here. I mean, it was very much longer. So thanks, Eric, for doing it more than 15 minutes. I think Eric is the one that has the issue with more than 15 minutes. I guess it's still. Anyways, guys, with that being said, peace, love, and happiness. Let it not be war. And remember, love always wins. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, we'll probably have some more things to talk about. Where's this button? Oh, here it is. There it goes. Peace out.